Our next presentation is Beyond the Hype, how the Internet of Things is poised to drive business and societal transformation on a global scale. We have Jack Domme, the Chief Executive for the Americas for Hitachi Americas. Please welcome Jack.
Good morning. Boy, we're excited to be here on behalf of Hitachi. And all of us here, I think we all share an excitement for IoT. And Miguel, that was a great presentation on maybe what IoT can do for all of citizens around the world. And we're excited here because we're going to share with you some of the solutions that are in place today. A wide variety of solutions that impact us in many ways from all over the world. And we'll drill down a little bit on IoT and the layers of complexity that are there. And then we'll kind of finish up with some of the business outcomes and the financial economics impact on this and how do we make money. But you'll also find how do we have a profound impact on our world today, on the industries that we all play in. You know, in the countries, in the states, and even in the cities that we might play in. And so we're going to go through this, we're going to go through some examples, and we're going to see some real application of these great technologies that we're all here representing, and how to apply them and get real value from this IoT phenomenon that we're all experiencing now. So IoT, we see all of the data. It's amazing the amount of data that these are generating. It's amazing the amount of sensors, the telemetry that is being attached to operational technologies. Decades and decades of operational technologies now coming alive through RFID sensors, bringing together telemetry from different sensors, communicating with other sensors. We see the vast amount of objects being created, the applications all over the world. But let's go a little deeper on it and see what the impact of IoT is. And we see billions and trillions of sensors all over the world connecting different objects through the internet, through different kinds of internets. We see apps everywhere, millions of apps coming together to produce data. A lot of it is different kinds of data. It's data sets beyond structured data. It's unstructured data. It's video, it's sound. We've all heard about that. And then we bring in the analytics, and it's the systems of those apps, those sensors, that data, and then it becomes data about data. Data inside the context of what it operates. This is going to explode, and it's already exploding. That metadata, the correlation of that is extreme. And then take those systems of all of that data and try and connect it to a different system, another system. Take the outputs of those systems as inputs to the other systems. All of a sudden, you're talking about city information exchanges. You're talking about smarter transportation systems. You're talking about IoT. You're talking about the profound impact that IoT will have on this world. Then you delve into some new areas. Deep learning, machine learning, parallel processing. The advancements that we're looking at right now around IoT that are taking simplistic sensors and formulating logical outcomes is amazing. It's the future. It's the generation. You see the metadata modeling. You see the basics of cloud platforms. Just the ability to share that data across systems, outputs from those systems to other systems is really troubling. But it's also fascinating. It's fascinating what the outcomes are. And when you look at what we're trying to do with all these masses of data, all these different kinds of systems, and then we take it a next step, and we try and do that and correlate all of that logic, make actions from it, and do it real time in a secured environment. Wow, that is big time scale. That is impressive if we can do that, right? So let's walk through some examples of that, and I think you'll start to see or share the excitement that we have around IoT and its impact all over the world. Let's start with a very large structure across the street. a very large sporting event just a couple months ago. Lots and lots of fans, one of the biggest sporting events around the world. Two cities playing against each other. And I can't use the names, of course. And so I think you're going to get the idea here pretty quick. If you were a Denver fan, you were pretty happy at the end of this day. So just to give you a perspective of this, these kind of events pose big security challenges, logistical nightmares. You can imagine the stress on this whole Bay Area from this event. You can imagine now, in the event, millions of people surrounding the area, hundreds of thousands of people participating through the days. You've got inside that event, you've got 750 cameras. Facial recognition, you've got sound sensors, you've got video analytics looking at cues and lines. You've got all kinds of drone detection software. You've got the detection of drones, detecting them, controlling them, and tracking the actual controller of that drone within minutes. So now you've got all of these layers and layers of public safety solutions coming together with lots and lots of public safety agencies coming together to try and orchestrate a safe event. This is real. This is based on IoT. This is based on extreme deep learning, machine learning, a lot of software to correlate the layers and layers and layers of public safety systems. All those inputs coming in, the video streaming that's coming in and correlating. So you can imagine one camera, one facial recognition actually gets a hit. It's a bad target. It's a bad person. Where has that bad person been? Let's go back onto the data platform. Let's bring up the tracking of that person. Where have they been? Who have they been with? Let's look at their Twitter feeds. This is real. This is what happened. And so now you start to look at the implications of IoT in our real world. And we didn't even know half of this was happening, thankfully. So now you've got to correlate all of these inputs, layers and layers and layers of different systems coming in together to create an actionable item based on an event. And the outcome, no major events, no major incidences, and a pretty happy Denver fan base. And all the people in Santa Clara, which held a beautiful, beautiful event. So that's one event. Let's go on. Let's talk about machine learning beyond the sensor itself. Let's go into GPS controls of cars. GPS, how you drive. Taking deep learning, machine learning, and a lot of data scientists, a lot of R&D engineering, and take some basic GPS sensors, and you can create a driving behavior that is more unique than your fingerprint. That's impressive. That's taking IoT to the next level, to the next business model. You can imagine the possibilities of this. We see where Uber wants to do shared drivers, shared cars with multiple drivers. Now we can identify the person in the car based on simple GPS inputs that is more unique than your fingerprints. We talk about GM and Ford looking at shared leasing. And now we see where we can identify the people who are driving that car. Maybe preventing erratic driving behavior before it starts, or identifying it on the road. So you can see the possibilities, the business models, the societal impact from these very simple applications around IoT. Let's take building a smarter transportation system. Obviously, this is in Japan. They use trains everywhere. You can imagine millions of miles of train tracks everywhere. Hundreds of thousands, or hundreds, if not thousands, of trains operating on these train tracks. Hundreds of stations. Millions upon millions of passengers every day riding on different trains in different parts of the country. And then comes an event, a 9.0 earthquake. We can't forecast earthquakes, but we can predict them and what we're going to do when they happen. Doesn't mean I can predict exactly the date, but we can predict the actions after it happens. And so now you can imagine a country with all of this transportation going on, built for this type of event, geospatial sensors, track sensors, train sensors, station sensors, weather sensors, all of these sensors, millions and millions of inputs from these sensors coming together within systems, across systems, outputs from systems, all creating an instant response in action. Can you imagine? That is really a smart country coming together with smart transportation. And in that instant, the action was hundreds of trains in motion. Dozens of bullet trains stopped immediately, within seconds, based on the coordination of IoT saving thousands of lives. That's real. So now you start to see the implications of what IoT, none of this was possible without IoT, without great correlation logic, without massive data platforms to bring all of this together, to search inside the data, to correlate it, and do it in a secured manner. Let's take another one. And I love this example because I think at the end you'll see the profound effect that IoT is having on the world and will have on the world for generations to come. Optimizing the value chain from farm to fork. We hear that. It's a popular saying, isn't it? And so we see that this whole entire value chain is having to work together. And I love the commercials, right? The commercials on TV about the farmer with the iPad out there. He's got a drone up here. He's got a big tractor over here. He's placing seeds within centimeters to optimize the crop production. He's got soil. He's got water. He's got everything going on. And it's amazing. We're seeing productivity in farms by up to 30% increases. But that's just the start. That's just the beginning. And then you take on the cold chain. And this is also what we do really well. Okay, so we're actually speaking from information here that the cold chain actually preserves food from all of the productivity in the farm. We now actually have climatized containers that are all telemetrized through sensors, RFID sensors. We can even track an egg. Put the RFID sensor on the eggshell, and we can track that egg from a temperature perspective, from the day it was harvested to the day it was eaten or harvested on the other side. And so from all of this, this cold chain is using preventive maintenance to make the trucks work, to optimize the trucks, to look at weather forecasts, to bring all of this information, layers and layers and layers of information, all correlated, all optimized, to now bring that produce closer to the market that's fresher, that might have different pricing aspects on it. And you know, it might also dictate what recipes we make based on knowing what food's coming down the value chain. I don't know if any of you are fans of Blue Apron or Green Chef or some of these other, made-to-order recipes. And I don't know if you've seen it. They bring everything to you. They ship it at your door. And so now, you know, even a guy like me, I can kind of cook something because everything is there. They even tell you, you know, how to pour it in and when to pour it in and everything else. And all the ingredients are there in the package. Very fresh, very nice. And a lot of them are GMO-free. They're organic. And so that's kind of important to me and my wife and my kids. And so all of this. And so you can imagine when you start to connect this value chain, all of a sudden, maybe then, since I look out at the farm, I can start to build recipes based on the day it's supposed to be delivered. The harvesting, the freshness, all of that is now being connected. And that's great. You can imagine the business models, the subscription models that are capable from this, but it really gets exciting from here. And so I look at this, I say, you know, from the United Nations, 1.3 billion tons of crops valued at over $1 trillion are either spoiled or lost in that value chain. 1.3 billion tons. We come by introducing new productivity on the farm. That increases productivity by 30%. IoT can reduce waste on the farm to fork, from farm to fork, by up to 50%. This has profound impacts on the society. I love it when Miguel was saying, can we make an impact broader than the economics of it? This shows that if we do this, we will save enough food to feed the world, to solve world hunger. That's why we should be excited in this room. The possibilities, the benefits of IoT and the applications of them and the solutions from them, based on all the technology we all want to talk about, is profound for generations to come. So let's talk a little about, maybe we call it big and boring, okay? Sometimes we call it dark and dirty, okay? These are factories, okay? It's not very exciting, but there is a lot of money to be made here in the savings and efficiencies of optimizing our factories. This is really where IT meets OT. Operational technologies for decades and decades have run our factories, our utilities, and everything else, and now we have the digitization. The RFID sensors, the telemetry that comes from placing those sensors all over the factories, placing video cameras with great analytic software to watch patterns form, to watch flows, to watch processes, to even sensorize the products that are coming through the factory so that we can understand the processes, the timing, and the efficiencies of the factory. An incredible opportunity facing all of the world around factory optimization. Dark and dirty, big and boring, but very impactful. Doing just the sensors is the easy part, right? Taking all those streams of data, correlating it, making sense out of it, creating patterns from it, do deep learning on it, and optimizing that factory is where it gets really, really hard. And of course, we need cloud platforms. We need data platforms. We need the ability to do analytics on it. We need to do it real time so that we can adjust the factories as we go. But the savings from this is really where I think a lot of us will focus over the next 5 to 10 years. $1 to $3 trillion of savings from the McKinsey study. That's amazing. We've already seen in the factories that we've done a 10 to 40% increase in productivity, and translate that into cost savings. It's real and it's here today, but with a lot of work and a lot of understanding. Let's peek inside now the Internet of Medicine, IoT, IOM. And let's look at what that environment looks like, from discovering new cures, sharing data, and you can start to see what it looks like in the ecosystem. You can start to see the inputs of your medical records, all of your consolidated medical records, other people's medical records stripped of their secure private data being used in research. All of that is going into an iterative system of data inputs, data discoveries, data search, data analytics, deep learning, machine learning, parallel learning, all coming together to deliver outputs, to deliver discoveries. And again, those discoveries become the inputs for somebody else to look at their research and to further expand the studies and discoveries of our medical community. I can speak to this because some of the outputs of this, and one of the more popular areas of cancer research, is around proton beam therapies. These are one of the most effective ways of killing cancer. And it requires lots of inputs. It requires lots of correlation. It requires lots of studies, iterations, trial and error, in order to save thousands of lives in the medical research community. And those outcomes, based on that, on those outputs, based on those outcomes, goes back into the system, and we do it again, and we get better and better. And the leverage around the world is the person who's out in the country can get the same kind of medical analytics that the person next to the Mayo Clinic can. And so now you start to see where IoT creates the possibilities of this IOM, the Internet of Medicine. And oh, by the way, all of these items here on the outputs, the proton beam therapy, all of it has preventive maintenance. It's all censored. It all has telemetry, because the uptime of these machines is very important to saving people's lives. They go for a few $100 million a pop, so they're pretty important, and yet we need to keep them up. And all of that has been orchestrated and created with the Internet of Things in mind. So, an iterative ecosystem for medicine. And all of this is changing the business models. As Miguel was saying, and some of the other speakers are saying, the business models are changing. It's becoming everything as a service. Everything. We could speak to this transportation as a service. I don't think the days of selling trains or selling automobiles, I think tomorrow maybe it's selling everything as a service. When you start to combine the capabilities of IoT, you start to see contracts of 30 years, selling transportation as a service based on SLAs around customer satisfaction, uptime, efficiency, ticketing systems, everything else becomes as a service. So if you think about it, the business models, we probably don't understand all of them today. But we know that the improving efficiencies, the Internet of Things, the telemetry, the data, the correlation, the deep learning, all help us improve our business models, improve our services to all walks of life. And so as we leave here and the excitement grows, not only today but in the future, as we all bring partnerships together to solve these solutions, solve these problems around the world like hunger, perhaps we in this room and IoT are creating a better future for generations to come, maybe a better future for our children's children. And that's really exciting to us and hopefully everybody in this room. So I want to thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Jack. Great job, Jack.